Thank you very much, Monica, for having me. You've been a supporter of me as I've gone through career change. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. So, casual. Ask questions, especially in a small group. This is more of a conversation. So mentorship is an important topic to me because it's confused me for most of my life. So I like to tell my story, and contextually that'll make a lot of sense. But the big idea is I have simultaneously been told by different groups of people that I should be more of a mentor and get more involved, and I have a talent for it, and I should, get in and help lead people. And also, I should shut up and not do that because I don't have life experience and you can't be a mentor. And that was confusing for me kind of growing up as someone who's naturally inclined towards leadership or being empathetic to other people. And so through that confusion and through my kind of career story that I'm going to share with you today, they're both kind of right. Both of those people have points, and that's kind of the point of it. And so I love talking to human resource professionals and folks whose focus at work is to unite teams and encourage people and show them growth paths, because there are diversity of perspectives that are really critical and important. So when we decenter ourselves and our identity from mentorship, there's something we can learn from absolutely everybody, and everyone can mentor in their own way and their own style. So it's much less about me, and it's much more about this perspective that we can lead from anywhere in an organization with any tools that we have, and our unique stories empower us to do that. So I'm going to share my story with you today. And it's truly my story, and we all have our own, and I'd love to hear yours if we have time. So, intergenerational factors is important in this presentation because I stand before you with much humility as a young-ish lady. And so talking about mentorship, that comes up, right? What have you done? What life experience do you have? I have all this, either trauma or joy, or we all do as people. And sometimes age is a factor and sometimes it's not. But what I have found coming up as a young executive and professional in my career, working with all types of different people, it's a factor in the room, and it's really cool to talk about it. So I share this perspective of being a millennial who has worked with the Gen Zs that come in, and also working with Generation X, and all of our different viewpoints about what a workplace is and how we talk to people and how we show up for work on time and how we use tools. All those things are absolutely real, and they cause friction and frustration. So if we can, again, decenter ourselves and kind of bridge a gap. I say that a lot. I'm a bridge between generations because of my business background. We can talk about it in a really supportive way. So this is both for folks in this room, and if you're leading younger people, I hope that you'll find kind of some nuggets that you could share with them. So mentorship and intergenerational mentorship is acknowledgement that there are different approaches to things, and they might be, they're not necessarily good or bad, they are different. A lot of friction happens when we have unclear expectations about the goal that we're trying to reach. If we should back up and kind of let our egos go, or our conflict about how we approach a goal go, and focus on achieving the goal, good things happen. And then there's inherent communication barriers, we're gonna disagree, I'm gonna be pissed about age or not, and that's okay, and let's work through it. And then removing ourselves from ego or identity. Just because you are the boss doesn't mean you are a mentor, and vice versa. So that's good context. Monica's heard my spiel before, our CEO group. So here's baby Alex. We're kicking it back to 1992 and beyond. Big dog lady, real or stuffed. I love them. And she's optimistic. She's listening, and she sat at the dinner table with my parents. My parents are longtime entrepreneurs from different backgrounds. My mother's a CPA, a forensic CPA. If the school treasurer is embezzling, they call Julie Devine up, and she goes in there and kicks ass and takes names. And then my dad, blue collar guy, finished the 8th grade, inherited a lumber company, and then they converted that into a tree service. And they ran a tree service for years. So they had employees, and mom's talking about bureaucracy of PTAs. And then they were landlords. They had 178 rental units at one time. And then in their later professional careers, they bought FedEx routes, which I did not even realize was a thing you could do. But FedEx is run by independent contractors. And then they built that into a transit company with 24 semis and ran the whole Yakima Valley. They're wild. They're crazy people. So my childhood was sit at the dinner table is very important to my mother. But their conversation about the day was about employees, and it was about frustrations, and it was about celebrations, and so all that kind of listen. They give you this context because in this way I'm a little bit of a freak, right? Like most children don't have this upbringing, and it's a huge advantage because I saw their perspective, but I also really empathized with their employees, or like, I see you're complaining about that. I don't know that I agree. So already there's this idea of different viewpoints, but a severe and like true appreciation for what they go through. And so when I come into the workforce, I can like think like an owner a little bit. I get that. That makes sense. So when you sit in a room and there's conflict, I can go, no, I get, yeah. No, but what you're missing is, right, and so then I become a mediator. I'm also a middle child. So we'll talk a little bit about therapy as well. I need to solve. So here, I'll skip one and then I'll go back. So a little bit about my journey that's going to give you more context to different perspectives on leadership. I grew up talking about business, and I didn't know there was something else you could do. I thought if you wanted to grow up and live the life you wanted and have autonomy and be in charge, whatever, I was a very headstrong young lady, you go to business school and you start a business, and that's what you do. I probably would have been like a poet or like a performer. Later in life, I'm coming back to that. But I went to high school, gung-ho, went to Running Start, finished with my AA at 17. I took off for Pacific Lutheran University, which is how I got over here, and then got a business degree. And through that, found communication and marketing in this way to kind of blend business with art, which is important later on. But then I got my first job at 20. I don't even think I was 21 yet. Full-time job. I was finishing school as an intern at a marketing agency. And I just went right to work. So I put my head down, 2014. They quickly said, oh, she's gonna work hard and she can do some stuff and she's eager, and we're not paying her very much. Let's put her in charge of stuff and see how she does. So without very many resources, I quickly took over the accounts department, which has some sales, it has some client management. It's a small agency, so I'm working with budgets where small business owners are I'm gonna pay you this $5,000, and if it doesn't work, I might go out of business. I'm gonna trust you, 20-year-old. For this marketing initiative, I'm okay. So there's stress on the client side, and then you're dealing with internal stakeholders, which all of you are very familiar with. So web developers and designers who are very passionate, artistic people, if you've ever worked on a marketing project before, who are upset that the client has feedback and aren't paid well enough and don't want to work till 2 a.m. to launch that website. And so we're mediating again, and we're managing. So from 2016 to 2020, I'm working like a dog, 80 hours a week, getting beat up, making $37,000 a year, just rough. But I'm living the dream because I'm a businesswoman. I've done it. And so a lot of lessons in that time. It goes well, I grow the company, we advance, and then about 2020, I am the vice president and really the right hand to the person running this organization. And I am dealing with making sure we're compliant in our HR practices, which I should never ever be in charge of. What a learning process that was, and here lies my appreciation for all of you. And talking to people about raises, and these are folks twice my age, right? And at this point 24, 25-year-old is you're asking me for an increase in your compensation or time off to pick your kids up from school, kids that I don't have that perspective. So there's friction, there's hard lessons here. And personal growth that has to happen also. There's a lot of hubris that gets in the way. I have a lot of imposter syndrome. We're trying our best. So School of Hard Knocks here is what you're seeing, and I am also negotiating for myself. So I was promoted to president when we decided to sell that marketing agency to a larger company, and also along this time I am really taking an interest in sales, in the practice of sales, and now I'm responsible for quotas. Hey, if this company wants to grow and hire more people and pay people what they're worth, which they're also talking to you about all the time, you need to bring in 5 million, you need to bring in 8 million. How do we do this without resources or tools? So very fortunate to have worked with hundreds of different companies in different professional services and areas, and I have remained a student and learned just a lot of hard lessons throughout this time. So we sell the company. That's a whole story in itself. We can go to drinks and talk about that at some point. And I actually just left in 2023. Monica was there with me through all of that, figuring out what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I started Crash the Boards, which is a strategic consultancy, which allows me to do things like talk to you guys, about my experience, and we do web development and branding and all that stuff that I've done for about 10 years with my partner Eric, who's my videographer today. So he makes the stuff, I sell the stuff. And then I also am in corporate sales for Microsoft, pays the bills, boring. So here's context for why I talk about mentorship and kind of how all that looks. So today I stand before you a mentor professionally. I'm part of a lot of mentoring initiatives, and that is grad students. I'm an executive coach to typically executive women who have reached C-suite in their career and need some encouragement or help either managing intergenerational teams or just kind of like finding their spark again. Like, we're tired, we made it, what do we do when we're there? I truly believe that anyone can be a mentor. Mentorship is purely having empathy for another person and being like a mirror to them, like a listening ear. And an encouragement that can be as simple as it is, and a kick in the ass when you need it. And then I've been fortunate to do some cool stuff. I've spoken at South by Southwest, won some awards, yay, and now we get to the good stuff. Like, how'd I do that? I don't know. It was hard. I'm tired, even at 32. There's a lot of lessons condensed into that decade. And so I think it's cathartic to talk about it, and I hope that someone, when I talk about it, hears a piece of themselves in that story or appreciates somebody else in their perspective that they maybe like haven't understood and have conflict with. So again, I'm firing people twice my age. Age comes up a lot in this. I'm managing clients, I'm managing their budget, and they're like, who are you? So the pushback, right, is something that you have to navigate through, and you have to get to a resolution. This is my job, this is the company's reputation. So in the workplace, absolutely, but also interpersonally in the way I lead a team of diverse folks. Lots of hard lessons there. And then also my responsibility to the client. The reality is I don't know everything. I've lived a lot less life than a lot of my clients and a lot of the people that I've worked for, and their viewpoints are really valid, and it's like, okay, that I don't know anything. And that was kind of like a hard lesson to learn. So big serving of humble pie, which has allowed me to decenter myself, which is why we can talk to really anyone about mentorship. So fortunate, you're getting the point here. Big opportunities, big insights, street MBA. Very grateful for those lessons. And in those lessons, I want to share some really poignant like moments of clarity for me, and then I'd love to hear if any of that resonates with you. In situations where people are struggling listening to you, or maybe you're coaching or mentoring somebody who has a little bit of a chip on their shoulder about their age or not being taken seriously for really whatever reason. I talk about decentering a lot. Someone's not going to hear you because of bias. That's going to happen, like, regardless. We all know this, I think, especially in an HR service line. We do lots of trainings on that, and we've experienced it personally. If we can't change that fact, how do we empower ourselves to get results? Like, quit, I know it sucks. I get it. It's frustrating. What are we going to do about it? And you may not ever fix that interpersonal relationship, but in a workplace setting, there is a way that we can achieve our goal. Let's talk about that. And so I have some more tangible points on that here in a little bit. I learned young, and I would give this advice to any person I mentor that is young and has a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. When you take things personally, you take yourself completely out of the game. And this applies in many different aspects. So what I mean by that is if I'm really pissed that Susie won't listen to me because I'm 25 and don't have kids, and she's 35 and has kids, right? If that's the only reason, if I take that personally, I have a vendetta against Susie, and it's not like accounting for Susie's perspective, because she's probably right. I don't know what that's like. I should listen to her, right? Or I should be more mindful about her time. So anytime I do like a gut check, like, I'm pissed about this. Why am I pissed? Let's think about that. Is it a me issue and my own pride or my own like idea of who's in charge or what it should be, or generational, what have you? Can I just remove that for a hot second, and can we focus on getting something done? Especially in a work environment. In personal relationships, sometimes we have to work through those things. In a work environment, like, we don't have to be best friends. We just have to achieve the outcome. So how do we do that? That was really important, like, mental shift for me. Parents always tell you there's no such thing as fair. I'm sure you've all said that to your children. Man, it sucks when you find out that that's true in life. So I tell this to my staff I still have. I'm like, okay, I get that you're upset. I get that it's not fair. Life ain't fair, right? Like, we have to focus on the facts. Let's come back to it. And that's more authority or authority chain, I find. Like, this person advanced, or they got this opportunity, or they got this office, like all the kind of the squabbles that we deal with. It's not about fairness. It's remove that from the equation, it'll be a lot less upset. It's about the greater success of the organization, and let's focus on that. And then the last kind of moment of clarity I had, for I'll take a little break, is people have patterns. So one of the most powerful things that I have ever discovered is like personality test assessments and MBTI types and Enneagram types. That is common language and vocabulary where you can decenter yourself. You can say, no, like Susie's not awful. She is an Enneagram type whatever, and that means she communicates and interprets information differently than I do. Got it. So right away, it's less personal, and it's more this how this person's brain works. The same way with like someone who's neurodivergent versus like neurotypical and how they approach deadlines. Critical in my career, especially with web developers and gorgeous creative souls like Eric there. Like it's not personal. They're not attacking you. They're not trying to make your life more difficult. Let's take a hot little time out. And you can almost weaponize that when you learn the different types of motivations and like personality types and working styles. You can identify it very quickly, and then you are unstoppable by like a quick shift in your language or how you approach somebody. We can get to results right away. It just can't be sometimes the way you would have wanted to do it. So huge. Learn yourself first. Learn about other kinds of people and how they operate, and you're going to be successful. So before I have a quick reframe here a little bit. Is this resonating with anyone? What kind of like nuggets? What's like interesting to you that'll help me frame this next portion? Anything? You could just be listening also, that's fine. Yes.
I like how you're talking about removing yourself from the outcome and detaching yourself from what is really going on and stop being self-centered or self-sufficient. Like removing your ego from it.
That's hard. It takes security, right? If we're deeply insecure for whatever reason in our personal lives or in a job. And in a job, that's real, right? That's our livelihood. Our money's attached to that. And a lot of times our success is based on our position at work. And that becomes our identity. And so it's really scary and totally understandable that sometimes our like first thought is self-protection or assertion. No, you're in charge. I'm going to listen. You need to listen to me. And sometimes like if we just let that go, good things happen. Anything else? That seems interesting? Yes.
I just like the idea of you can validate somebody else's feelings, and that's totally okay, regardless of whether or not I would agree with that.
Right.
Perspective or not, doesn't matter, because ultimately all I want is this result over here. So great, yes, I know life isn't fair, and still we gotta get there. So I'm not gonna debate over here. We're just going there.
Yes, results oriented. At least in a work setting, I think it's much harder personally to like you don't have to work with that person personally, but that's huge. Did you?
Oh sure. I was just going to comment on your communication about people having patterns. Just made me think about how all behavior is trying to communicate something. So how do we adapt to make sure we're communicating the right things to fit the person we're talking to, fit the situation, and things like that. Stay nimble.
Yeah, empathy. And when I say empathy, I don't mean like you care about that person and like want them to even be successful. Like people suck. That's okay. It's more like in a situation of conflict, even if I like could not stand everything about this person, go like, I could see why you're saying that. I could understand how your brain got there. Got it. How do we get to this next point? Exactly like what you're saying. My favorite example is I had a web developer who would argue, like born to argue, loved him, brilliant, so good at what he did, very difficult to manage, probably took 15 hours a week just of management to just get his stuff done, but he was good. So I kept him on staff for a long time, and he knows this. Like I will send him this video. Jared, I love you. He taught me so much about the neurodivergent brain and how you have to set up environments differently for different types of people to be successful. Like, got it. Blew my mind. And he had all the vocabulary for it, executive function, short-term memory. Shout out to Jared. And he was fact-based, and it didn't matter. He respected me as a boss. It wasn't a respect thing. But if I said, this landing page needs to change, client's not gonna like it, I need it to be this color and this way, he would just dig his heels in and say no. And then I figured out it's because he's fact-based. He needs research. If I say it, he's not gonna believe it. It's not because of me. He just wants to see it written down on a piece of paper that like 72% of people like a purple background on their form. So that was annoying, yes. And also, as a young woman, I'm like, it's because I'm a woman, right? Like our brain goes there. I'm like, you're not listening to me because you don't respect me. So we decenter, we take a time out, And I dig into Jared's personality type and understand that he's a factual-based person. And the way I communicate is high level, and it doesn't seem factual to him. I'm like, okay, all right. So we find research that the people like a purple form, whatever, and then it's as simple as going, hey, Jared, I read this. What do you think? Do you agree? Oh, yeah, we should make the form purple. Perfect. Moving on. Got it. So it's if you can take that little bit of time, you can't always, and learn, especially someone you're having conflict with on your team. And it's for us in this room, but it's the people you coach and mentor. Like when they're like, they just won't listen, or they don't like me because it's a, do you know what their personality type is? And whatever like convention that looks like, there's so many of them. Whatever you guys use as common language internally, knowing each other is so powerful. Like really, really powerful. Good. Anything else? We're tracking, it sounds like. Yes.
Well, I have that everyone can be a mentor.
Yeah.
And, you don't have to have a title or whatever, and people are always watching you anyway. So,
Yes.
yeah, you know, even if you're like, well, I'm an introvert or something, you know.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Labeling too, and that's kind of like the downside of the personality test. You get this, oh, I'm a this,
Yeah.
and you can't break out of that. It's tendencies. It's how your brain is wired. And luckily, there's probably other people in the room that think just like you, and especially in introversion or just being quieter or listening before we like interject. It's like a really beautiful quality. I should be more like that. That is leadership to those people in that room, right? Even just to have like solidarity. So yes, decenter ourselves, and don't be afraid to lead and kind of take charge. So I love this reframe. Mentorship and authority, especially in the workplace, as I mentioned, can be a part of our identity, and we hold really tight to it because it means, I don't know, we're validated, we're successful, we're climbing the ladder, we're doing all this stuff. And I laugh, and a friend of mine actually gave me this reframe. It's like, when we have conflict at work, why are we mad at each other, like, and not the ecosystem and the systemic oppression around us? Not to get into a discussion like that, but you know what I mean? Like, we all may like our jobs and find purpose in it, but like, we don't work for fun. We're all like here to work to earn a living, and if the company succeeds, amazing. If you succeed, even better, right? But to take a step back from conflict and go, yeah, I'm just trying to do my job. I am trying to do what I was assigned with excellence and get a good outcome, and then we can all like go home and chill out. It allows me to take a deep breath and calm down, and just I always say, we're not curing cancer here. Like, we're just solving a problem. Let's everybody chill and we can move on. And we don't even really have to solve it. We can just move on. So the reframe of, I'm not really angry at you, I'm frustrated in this situation, and it really is not going to make a difference to our life later on in most situations. Let's cool it. And that helps conflict a ton. And then there's strength in numbers when, as employees, we work together. Real change can occur. So that is more in terms of like, if you have somebody in a leadership position who is not embracing these tools and is not a mentor and is actively causing problems, and you feel like you can't move forward as a group or a team or an organization, banding together, even if you disagree, is really powerful to like push a viewpoint or perspective or change through. And then forgiveness, this is the let go model, which is really what I'm trying to associate with here. Generational differences are there, and they're positive, and they should be celebrated. If we stop thinking about them as negative or in conflict, just different, the same way that our brains work differently, and forgive. We don't have to carry that frustration around with us all the time. As HR professionals, you know, we talk about wellness and de-stressing all the time. This is huge. Don't carry conflict around with you. Forgive, move on. You're not, bad, you're just different. We can move forward. Okay, so I have some key takeaways, either for you or folks that you coach. Regardless of age, we should all practice these things. But when I go through these, think about experienced leaders and how they might apply it, and younger leaders and how they may apply it. And then happy to like kind of, if any situations come up where you have stories about like when you've experienced these things, shout them out. I would absolutely love to hear it. My number one advice is any age, any location, position that you are in, You're not in competition with one another. Even if you actually are, if two people are up for the same position, you are going to go much farther and be seen in a better light and act more diplomatically if you can embody inspiration instead of competition. Eric wrote this line, it's beautiful. True influence isn't about outpacing others, it is about igniting something within them. And that's really powerful. Even if it is a peer, if you ignite something within somebody, you could change their entire life. And that to me is far more powerful than anything that you could achieve like in the workplace, right? These are lasting impressions. We're building a legacy always, whether we know it or not. And it's really hard to fight with somebody who's not fighting back with you, right? If it's, I support you, I want you to do well. It's hard to argue with it. Leaders gain respect also by proving that they can do the work. I think a lot of friction, especially younger generations, right? Elephant in the room, they're like, you're not in charge of me because you don't do the work, I do the work. You just tell me to do it. I think especially in technician-based jobs, and they're missing the work that you did to get there, or what delegation is, or that's a very common thing I see in coaching scenarios. So don't be afraid to get in and do the work alongside them, or just have that conversation with younger folks about like, the reason I know what to tell you what to do, babes, because I did it. Like you're missing context here. You have to know people's whole stories. That teaches them empathy and to not jump to conclusions, but then also get in and do the work alongside if you're having conflict. Really, really huge. So that to me is like embodying inspiration instead of I'm your boss because I said so, to there's a why to this, which I believe is my next point. My next to next point. Also, intergenerationally, and for folks in this room, this is much more when you have Gen Z folks in your office and they are communicating to you and you're like, oh my God, that was so rude. Like they're incredibly direct in my experience. There's less filter, we're less worried about hurting people's feelings, we're getting to the point, which I think is like a beautiful quality, but it takes us aback. Specifically, like the way I'm again an anomaly because of all the business conversations I grew up around. But I'm like, oh, like maybe we reword that. That's a lot. Focus on content, not the delivery, and that goes for them as well because we have communication styles that they don't like also. But this has really helped me really in all. Relationships in general. I want to hear the intent of what you are saying because the way you said it just really pissed me off. Just like a quick little pause there is really helpful. And we get frustrated. We don't use our tools all the time. So specifically intergenerationally, hit pause for a second and think about the content of what that person is saying. I've also been in situations where someone's desperately trying to tell me something and I can't hear them because of the way that they're saying it, and they're so upset and come to me later like, all I was trying to communicate was this really gorgeous thing, this beautiful idea, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, just the way you were saying it, I didn't get that. So creating a space for that also, or like a great tool is, can I stop you? Could you say that for me in a different way? Like I'm not getting it. Could you try to communicate that to me differently? Especially if someone's upset and you have that relationship. Good tool. And this is like for kids, for anyone. And then the why. I think this is really important for younger generations in the workplace. There's frustration, right? That's not my job. I don't get paid to do that. There's a lot less like chutzpah or gumption to just pick up and do things. And there's a real reason for that. I think folks are afraid of being taken advantage of, and work is maybe not their number one priority because of everything that's gone on in the world and their generational perspective. All really good things that I agree with. But as a leader, we get frustrated when we see other team members picking up more slack or you're taking on too much and you just want people to be motivated to do better. And you don't necessarily want to increase their compensation to do that. Or does it sound familiar? It's like a common trope that we have here. The why really helps when we ask to do something like I would love for you to do this, whatever, this task or take on this initiative because it's going to do X for not only the organization, but your friend in this department and your friend in that department and the client that I know that you care about, right? So if we just stop approaching the problem first with because I told you to, or if you don't, it's disciplinary, or right, like we're frustrated because that's not the way that we would do it. And so I see leaders a lot saying you need to do this or else, or this is a part of your job, and then there's conflict and we don't leave room for the why. So first explain the why, and then if they still don't do it, sure, disciplinary action. But that's a popular one. Anyone have, does it sound familiar? to anybody? I see nods in the back. Okay, good. Is it a younger employee?
Yeah, no, I'm just a huge believer in the why. The why
Yeah.
will get you so far.
Yeah.
If you explain why it's not only good for them, but why it's not good for, why it's good for the company, but why it's good for them.
Yeah.
You get so much more buy-in.
And that's a good point. Good for them. This is, if you do this, it's not even about the success of the company. If you don't care about that, this is going to open up a pathway for you to do, or you're going to take this lesson wherever you go next. Relating it back to them is really, really critical. I think it also opens up autonomy to make different decisions. Like, here's the end goal. This is the why. This is what we want to achieve. I'm asking you to do this. But how you get there, you have different skills and talents than I have. As long as you get to the why, I don't care how you get there, that's amazing. And we can celebrate, and you maybe taught me something also. So flexibility, autonomy, also really critical, but we do have to like align and arrive at the same why, which is important. Which brings me to my next point. Clear and measurable objectives solve so many problems, or at the very least, allow us to diffuse situations by saying, like, I get it, I get why you're upset, this is what we need to achieve. How are we gonna get there? And move forward. And this is for all ages, this is for people in general. If we know what the target is, then we hit it or we don't. And then it's less subjective and there's less to argue about, hypothetically. It doesn't always happen that way, right? So some things are easy to set clear and measurable objectives on. We got this many meetings or we didn't. We turned in this paper on time or we did not. Other things like job performance are tricky, and I would be preaching to the choir in this room about job descriptions and holding people accountable to those, and those being clear and measurable, but it's the most important growth path tool I think leaders have in organizations, because you have a crystal clear, not to be confused roadmap for, if you do this incredibly well, then there's a next step for you. Or if you're confused about why you're not advancing, let's go look at this clearly measured set of objectives. Less confusion, personal empowerment, everyone knows where they stand. Really, really huge. Even in like working relationships, I set people down to like, what is the, okay, you just started and I'm gonna be your direct report. Here are my expectations. We're gonna have one-on-ones. Here's the agenda I'd like you to prepare. You have your job description, cool. What are your objectives for me? Like, what's success? What can I do for you that's successful? Just like having a conversation and signing off on measurable objectives, huge, 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 huge. And then lastly, big words, big powerful words, extreme empathy and radical candor are rare, I find. And so when you use them, you tend to like disarm people, especially if they're upset. So extreme empathy to me is exactly what we've been talking about. It's not like bleeding heart, I feel sorry for you. It is, I understand your perspective. And if I don't understand your perspective, I'm gonna work hard to understand it and how you got there and how you're feeling. I'm gonna put myself in your shoes just to try them on and see what it's like. I don't have to agree, I don't have to like it, but I'm gonna try and do that in an extreme fashion. So what I mean by that is sometimes we really don't want to do that with people, but we have to. Open the mind, practice extreme empathy, and then a lot of conflict gets easier to solve. And people feel empowered. Like, this is a really critical part of mentorship, where you heard someone and they feel appreciated and they're not threatened. They will remember that forever, regardless of the outcome of the situation. It's how you made them feel, right? And then radical candor, this is a tricky one, especially intergenerationally, and is very variable by communication style. Everyone's familiar with radical candor, I think, at this point. Kim Scott's book, if you have not read it, it's great. And it's this idea that we have a memorandum of understanding, you and me as coworkers, or as peers, or what have you. We have amnesty here. So I'm gonna give you direct feedback, and my goal is not to beat you down. It's to give you constructive feedback to reach the goal quickly and without waste and efficiency, right? And you're not gonna be able to punish me for being clear with you. We're not gonna hold grudges, we're not gonna gossip about it. We have this arena of amnesty and trust, and within that we can communicate and say what we mean. So a lot of times there's confusion because we're dancing around feelings, or we're very worried about what the other person's gonna say or interpret. Radical candor is, hey, we missed the mark on this, and I think it's because you did X. I wanna support you. How do we move forward from here? And people don't communicate like that. I think specifically on the West Coast, people do not communicate like that. And I'm from the West Coast, right? But as I've moved into corporate sales environments with global teams, people tell me, very Chicago. You just say what you think. I'm like, yeah, like, Yes, and then I've had to soften my edges, my humble pie that I've taken. Not everyone responds to that, and you need to learn to moderate that. But radical candor allows us to get to the heart of the problem and fix it so quickly. So in any environment, if you can practice those two things or just maybe use that as vocabulary, then it's not honesty or directness, because that means different things to people. You at least have like a framework. So if you have anyone on your team that you're like struggling to be radically candid with, just read the book together. It's a really great exercise. Or like watch the TED Talk. It's wonderful. Okay, I think. Yeah, don't, and without harm. It's not like radical candor, your shoes are ugly. Like that's not helpful. We don't talk about that. It's not helpful. It's only when there's conflict. Perfect. And then I love this one. I had a mentor tell this to me and I've never forgotten it. Be undeniable. Doesn't matter what conflict you're in, and this is for folks who are ascending the ladder or have achieved the rung of the ladder that they desire. Conflict aside, people aside, if you show up and those clear measurable objectives are met and you bring success to the company and you provide value, people can have all the problems with you they want. You are of value to the company. Your position is secure, and remember that and take heart in that and be proud of that. And this is also for younger folks who maybe don't feel like they're in a position to lead, as you mentioned, or don't feel like they have permission to take charge in a situation in whatever way that's natural to them. If you just do it, right, and use your natural skills and get a result, you've done it. Be undeniable, and you will get where you want to go. It doesn't even really matter where that is. It could be professionally or career-wise. Do what you need to do to be, without question, a success, whatever that means to you. Okay, so those are snippets. If I was talking to newer leaders, which I do, I am fortunate to be a part of the Milgard School of Business, it's a very long name, at UW-Tacoma's mentorship program, specifically for graduate students, for women. They're usually coming from international backgrounds, and they are navigating a new culture and a new corporate structure and new lives in the U.S. and these are some insights that come up often that you may be able to share with your younger folks. We just talked about it. Don't wait for permission to lead. Don't wait for a title. Don't wait for someone to call on you in a room. If you have something to say and it provides value, say it. Go for it. Lead. Set up a meeting if it's not being set up. Take the notes. Do whatever you got to do. Like don't wait for permission. This is a caveat. I caution them. Because typically the folks that I coach in this kind of age group are I wouldn't do that because I'm not getting paid for it, or I'm not going to do more than my role entitles, right? That's also perfectly fine if that's your perspective, but then you can't complain about not growing or not getting opportunities or not, right? So don't ask for permission, but also don't refuse to participate and lead until you get a title, because the news for you, usually, sister, it's not going to come, or it's going to come slower, right? Like, dig in, help, contribute. You don't have to overwork, you don't have to take on too much, but like show that you have some gumption here. It's okay to not know it all. It was a huge lesson for me. I felt already kind of against the wall being younger and not having the experience, and was very hesitant to admit when I needed help or just be like humble and say, I'm not sure. Let me check. Those are beautiful words. I'm not sure. Let me find out for you. Is a much more trustworthy phrase than like a lie. So I remind folks of that often. Know when to let go. You can do all of this right. You can exercise all of your tools. You can research all of the MBTI types, and it might not work out. Still, that's also like a really hard lesson. Take heart in that you've done what you can and you've truly pushed yourself and exercised your decentering techniques. And if it doesn't work out, let it go. Not meant to be. Maybe somebody else will be that person's mentor. Everything's a lesson if you frame it that way. Even bad things, we can always learn something, even if we're upset. And don't be afraid to ask for help. And then for my experienced leaders, these are some common things that come up in my executive coaching sessions. And a lot of those look like, I'm frustrated with this. I just can't like figure out how to work with this person. And I trust them. I believe in them. I want them to do well. I don't get it. Help me get it. And so I act as a bridge in that way. So here's some stuff that comes up, and this is actually a therapy term that I really love, changed my life. Different time, different tools. And the context of this is I was so angry with my mother as a 20-year-old that she didn't appreciate my artistic spirit when I was growing up. Like she didn't see me emotionally and give me this input that I wanted, and she didn't validate me at all these different times. I'm working through this with my therapist. And she goes, different time, different tools. Have we maybe thought that like she didn't get that either? And I was like, oh my she doesn't know how. Like, mind blowing. So this is really important for senior leaders to understand different time, different tools. They maybe don't have your perspective. Vice versa, you don't have their perspective, and if it's just different, they're not aggressing you or disrespecting you. I see that a lot, specifically in female leaders. It's like it's taken as a sign of disrespect. We've talked about that, and this could be showing up to work, the way they do their work, the way that they communicate, attitude. It could be lots of different things. But this little mantra I say to myself to keep me cool: different time, different tools. Let's get on the same page. Let's use the same tool set, and we'll be good. Get to the point. This is a great one. For my more experienced leaders, we tend to dance around, especially in this climate, what we want to say. And if you establish with consent an arena of radical candor, you just get to it. Just give them the feedback and move on. It does everybody a world of good. Don't worry about anything else, but first establish that environment of radical candor and extreme empathy. Don't sweat the small stuff. What I mean by that is related to different time, different tools. Does it matter that they're on their phone for 20 minutes? Does it matter that they don't show up to work on time? And it might. It might. That might be a policy that is in place, and it might be direct disrespect. There's scenarios, right? But if you find yourself being super frustrated with somebody, I want you to write down why you're frustrated with them. If it's work related and affects their performance, valid. If you just don't like it because it's not your style and it doesn't affect their work performance, just double check. Just like real gut check yourself real fast. And a lot of tension dissolves there. There's still issues to work through, of course, and there's like standards of professionalism that we have to adhere to. I'm like a hard ass on that. I get it. So this is something I tell myself all the time. Is it that important? And it might be, and then we can move forward. I also think praise, and I know we don't like this one, especially if we're having trouble with somebody. A simple thank you, or the way you did that was really nice. Appreciate it. Thank you. Even if it's menial, or you're like, you did that, but I did 7 other things. Not about you. Praise goes so far. Let people know that they're doing a great job. I think we're missing that in a lot of intergenerational working relationships. Like, I know you don't want to sometimes, but you will get, what's that phrase? More bees with honey. Thank you. Yep, exactly. And it's actually contradictory to a lot of the way that younger generations talk. You wouldn't think, because it's hard and because it's direct and there's a bigger attitude, it's actually shocking. Or quite soft. Like, with just a little bit of praise, a little bit of attention, a little bit of recognition goes really far, and they'll remember that. And then that is a first step towards trust, where you can start to give them more direct, radically candid feedback because you've softened first. So you mentioned it at the beginning. Remove ego and pride, and it's really hard to do. And different maybe than we've done it before, but if you soften first, they can soften, and then we can get to the results and work into that relationship. And then it's different than what I talked about earlier. You're building a legacy. This is the kind of like everyone's watching you all the time. Sure, but I would also say you don't have to invest in everybody. You can't as a mentor. So you can try these tools, and if it's a bad fit, don't worry about it. That person's going to be fine. They're going to find other leaders. Be very mindful of the legacy that you build. And that's not like a reputation thing. Of course, we should be kind to people, but recognize where effort will not be returned and maybe isn't worth it, and focus that effort where it will be. And that's a tough one that you should typically like work through and talk through. Okay, I've talked a lot. Here we go. This room is different than a lot of rooms I give this talk in because you know these tools, you use these tools, you unite teams. So I love predictive index for job performance. I love MBTI, obviously, personally and professionally, and Enneagram. Are there other tools that you guys are using that I should maybe add to this as the experts that help us understand each other better and give common vocabulary to how we work? Or are these like the standard that you're finding are used? Yeah, there's still like kind of the big 3.
I mean, we
Yeah.
just put in strength finders. I mean,
Yeah.
that's another one.
Yeah.
That
Yep, that's a great
we're using
one.
quite a bit, which
Yeah.
when you said learn yourself, we're learning ourselves,
Yeah.
but we also know what the strengths of our team are.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that common language, I think, is
Exactly.
like the biggest thing. I'm
Yep.
an orange. I'm an orange. That's all I remember. I should learn that one better. So when I talk to younger folks, shockingly, like that graduate program at UW, they've never heard of this. They're like, what what do you mean, MBTI? I'm like, oh my gosh, we gotta get you going on that. That's gonna change your life. So know yourself first, start there, the good and the bad, and how you frustrate people, how you come across. Know that first, and then go to work on learning everybody else around you and how to get the best out of them. This is in your personal and professional relationships, but do the work, or you are gonna be stuck in a lot of frustrating situations and with nothing to do but complain about it, right? So that's that radical candor. Here's what you do about it. Okay, so that is my chat on mentorship. Crash the Boards is a strategic creative consultancy, as I mentioned. So Eric and I have decades in really fast-paced, sometimes toxic agency environments. Worked with hundreds of businesses, and what we're passionate about is removing barriers that you would normally have. Like, it's really expensive to work with an executive agency. It's really expensive to get executive coaching. There's the two of us, and we want to give our knowledge away to people who wouldn't have access to that before. So that includes strategy for your business, the actual promotional things you need, branding, web experiences, video storytelling, and then coaching. I have several programs, and that could be for marketing, it could be for sales or mentorship type topics that we talked about today. And that's us. And I would love questions or discussion or anything that stood out to you, or I'll leave you alone for today.
Well, I like the thing, it's not about you. Yes, it is. It's about
Of course. It is a little bit. Yeah.
It's about me, but.
Yeah.
But one of the things I have found, just working with people and in the HR industry, that I guess, I knew, but I didn't realize the percentages, at least in my experience, is how many people will go to extremes to avoid a conflict.
Yes.
Like, oh my goodness, like, let's just deal with it and get on with it. And like, that would be so much easier. But I work with so many, presidents and different things, and they're just like, they will just do almost anything in their power just to not have to address it. And I'm like, wow, because there's this relief on the other side, that I guess that they don't see, or I don't know. Anyway, I've personally found, been amazed at how many people will just really avoid conflict at almost all costs.
Super common. And then it's hard to figure out what's actually going on or what the issue is. And so it's something I'm sure you guys navigate a lot. And when we create an environment of trust, like even if it's, can you tell me why you don't want to work on this conflict away from everybody else? Could you just share with me like what is making you uncomfortable? Radical candor. That's great. Then you can move from there, but very common. Very common. Good. Thoughts, feelings?
One of the things you mentioned too is praise. A generation where everybody gets a trophy, right?
Yes.
So,
that age-old saying. Right.
For a long time we all fought that.
Right.
But now a lot of us have created kudos boards and we've brought it into our workplace so they can recognize each other peer to peer, leader to employee. So I find it just, if this is what they want, give it to them, right?
I know.
So.
Exactly. Have you seen change? Like, is that well adopted? Did you see a big difference when you started to do that?
Yeah, my previous employers and the current, we've all created recognition platforms where employees can recognize each other, and we don't hear that too much, like, oh, everybody gets a trophy. You know what I mean? It's just recognition, and that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, it's how do we
change the
motivate
paradigm.
people?
Change
Yes.
the paradigm.
Take yourself out. You don't have to
Yes.
like it, and go home and complain about it. Like, yes, because that's also release, right? It's not like adopt this mindset wholeheartedly. It's not groupthink. You can be like, I don't agree with that. I don't think they earned that or whatever. That's a perfectly valid feeling, also. But in a work environment, it's how do I motivate you?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's what you need to be motivated, you got it, dude. Here's your trophy,
Right.
right? So it's decentering oneself, and then to get to the results, huge. And then I'm not stressed about it. And then I'm like, here's your trophy. Instead of, I'm not mad. I'm like,
Exactly.
enjoy. And I see it in their office. I'm like, it looks so good. Great. That's good. It's a good point. Good point. Yes.
I also like the praise because I often find it's so much easier to call someone in when something's gone wrong.
So true.
And usually those are the conversations that people are hearing. So even if it's just something as, hey, you showed up today on time, appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the coffee.
I know that's hard for you.
Right,
Thank you.
It's little things like that put some positivity back in the day, because we all know when something goes wrong, you're going to be called in, and we're going to have that conversation.
Yeah, and then that affects your impact as a leader, because then you are only associated, like talking with you is only negative.
Exactly.
Like that's not helpful for you either. It doesn't feel good, doesn't help them. Yeah, really great point. Mix in that positivity. Was there any situation that I talked through or like key insight that you're like, I have absolutely had that before and you haven't been able to navigate through it? Or is all of it, you're like, yeah, that comes up, we dealt with it? Is there like a stickler in there anywhere? I'm curious, especially with HR professionals. Who get a lot more of this than I think any other professional group gets, because you're dealing with people and we all deal with people. We have other distractions around us, so we don't do it all the time.
What was it that you said? It was like, it was the messaging, right?
Oh,
that,
yes.
That was given in like.
Content, not
Yeah.
the tone. Yes.
And so like, I had that happen to me the other day. I was challenged by leadership on something, and I heard the message, and I read it in an email, and I took it out of context,
Mm.
and I like walked away for like 15 minutes. I was like, I gotta cool down,
Yeah.
and then I like read it, and I was just like, I'm gonna assume positive intent.
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
another one of my
And
favorite
it was
phrases.
just like-
Always assume positive intent.
All right, I'm
Mhm.
reading it wrong. This is what they were trying to say, and I read it in like a more bubbly tone. And I had an
Yeah.
perception.
Good. Did you happen to like confirm with them, like, I'm reading it this way? Is that correct?
I just let it
Yeah, a different scenario, I'm sure, with
Yeah.
leadership, but yeah, that's a good point.
Unless it's all caps.
go. I'm
No
gonna give them an
emojis.
award. I'm gonna give them an award
Does
for
not mean that they're yelling either.
Maybe you got
Actually
stuck in
looking
cat
at
box.
starting in mentorship. A lot of this seem like the framework is already in place if you already have mentors. So what about kind of advice for those who don't have a formalized mentorship program?
Oh,
And then
love.
getting people to want to be mentors and selecting people to be
Yeah.
mentors and things like that.
It's sensitive, and I think it evolves. It depends on the group of people that you have and who you are mentoring. So the mentorship program I'm a part of, they have a structure that you can follow if you want, but they also encourage, like, meet with someone, figure out what they need, what they want to learn, what they want mentorship on, and then you guys make your own program and we like support it. But there's that memorandum of understanding. You know, we're going to commit to the time. That's a big thing. Is like you're going to commit to meeting 5 times. In those 5 times, you're going to success is X, so it's the measurable objectives,
Yeah.
but leave room for different types of people to have different types of engagements and experiences. So like a framework, like these are some tools, so they have like a library of, these are videos you can talk through if you don't have anything else to talk through. Or here's a book you could read together, and it's a resource library, but you guys can also go through your own. And then camaraderie is really important. Like we have a mentor meeting where we only speak as mentors. Mentees have their own, and then we have times where we're together. So you're very well supported and can navigate, you know, conflict or a lot of things come up in mentorship that, like, I'm not equipped to deal with. I'm not a counselor. But we are talking about life and we're talking about motivation. And so I recommend like having professionals or resources for any type of life event that comes up and empowering your mentors. Again, you don't have to know the answer to that. You don't have to like personally coach this person through it, but you also have to know like what the flags are to ask for help.
Right.
And vice versa. Yeah, it's sensitive. It's hard, but I think people are really willing to show up initially and just be really diligent about time. Like if you are going to commit to this, you must commit to the meeting 5 times virtually, or that's where it goes wrong is people don't make the time to meet because schedules are tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great advice. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm happy to talk more about that also.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, good. What time is it? Oh, we're right on time. We killed it. Nice. Good. I would love feedback on this. This is something I workshop specifically for younger folks who are having trouble advancing or executive folks that are really frustrated with their team. So it's usually more tailored to a work environment where the issue has already been identified. I first gave this to like a women in tech specifically audience, workshopping it a little bit as HR professionals, like send me feedback. If I could talk more about something or specific examples would be helpful, please let me know. I have business cards up here. Monica has my information.
I know you do a lot of mentorship for women. Can you
Yes.
explain the difference between mentorship for a woman compared to a man?
love this
Because
question.
I'm always curious with that.
I love this question.
Okay.
And I don't even mean to say that. I have to work up, like, so I also mentor men. It tends to happen that women naturally come to me and we enter into like a coaching relationship because they're coaching me as well. I also have coaches, male and female. I think it is about perspective. So it's not that I won't or shouldn't or can't or promote that way. I may have a really helpful perspective to you in business because we work in the same field and I've had similar experience and I can really help you as an executive coach. But I may not know what it's like to be a husband or a father or the way that people react to you in a room. But I certainly have that for young women. And the same as like I may not have that experience and viewpoint on being a black woman in business. And so as long as we acknowledge those things and we still decide to enter into a mentorship relationship, we can all learn something from one another. But I'm just very like cautious of, am I gonna be able to fully support you as a person and understand your viewpoint? With just very little time to do so. So unless we're really gonna deep dive and get to know each other, and some just people aren't usually willing to pay for that, it's tough. So it either happens naturally, and because it happened naturally, it's usually women because I share their perspective. But yeah, I have executive coach and sales coached a lot of gentlemen. and love it. My communication style is usually great for me.
Thank you.
Could be. But more and more, I'm getting inquiries from folks that are like, I'm stuck, and I want to know how you overcame this at such a young age. Tell me, like, I want the sauce, because I'm having problems where I can't advance past this stage, and I'm ready, and I think I'm ready. Like, what is stopping me? And I can help you, anyone there, because that ownership talk track in my brain, understand how they work. Good question. Thank you for asking that question. I appreciate that. Cool. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate it.